Morning out there, wherever you may be. Hope you're all doing well. Just looking at this boat over here. This is a friend's boat. He's got it on an anchor at the moment. And it goes to show, you put this out in, this went out and then that storm came, which was, I don't know what it was, 60 mile an hour, something like that winds. It was pretty rough. Well, pretty rough that we lost a couple of pots. But he got it on anchor. I think he's got it on a fisherman's anchor. I can't be 100% on that, but I believe it's a fisherman's anchor he's got down. It just shows, fisherman's anchor. Good things. The old style ones, you know, the sort of, I don't think I've got, well, I've got one in the front, but I'm not going to hook it out, like, you know, like that kind of thing. And yeah, they hold well. That's what I used to anchor my boat on here a long time ago, because I had a mooring in there, and then I used to come out and just drop it out in the sandy and just put it on anchor, and it went through quite a lot. As long as you put enough rope out and you've got a bit of chain on there, take the shot and get yourself a nice angle on that rope. When they grip in, they grip in. Anyway, today's mission is we're going to go out and we're going to I'm just going to do some fishing. Now it looks pretty flat in here and there's no real wind, but the tide's going out, and that first hour of dropping tide, the water goes out the bay, joins up with the tide going that way still, because normally it goes that way in a couple of hours, but it goes that way, joins onto it, and then all hell breaks loose. It's like the rapids out there. So it just rips through, and it is insane. And yeah, sort of not fun being in it. And very dangerous sometimes as well if you come in late. You go out there, it can be flat like this, you come in and then that tide switches and you get, because you've got to get between this sort of passage bit, and that's where the water rips through. Yeah, it can make your heart stop if you get it wrong. So, simple thing is don't get it wrong. Other times it's probably safer just to stay out there and try and come back through it. But yeah. So anyway, that's why I'm in no rush today. But we're going to go out and try for, just going to use the lures. I'm not really doing much today. I'm just going to pop out, drop a few lures, see if there's any fish. I might do the odd pot in here when we come back, and there's one I might look at. I don't know, I might not bother. But it's jammed. So I might try and see if I can free that again. Because sometimes if you just leave them, you'll go back and they'll just come straight up. So, if not, I'll have to ask somebody to try and free that, because this boat's not exactly got the weight behind it to be able to free pots. On top of that, today we're going to discuss or compare this boat, the Orkney, to this boat, the Plymouth Pilot. Now I say Plymouth Pilot, it's not the original Plymouth Pilot, it was based on the design of a Plymouth Pilot, because the original Plymouth Pilots had inboard engines. That one obviously that I had an outboard engine, but it will make a good comparison, because you're talking about a semi-planing boat, or one that goes on the plane, comes back down off the plane with a big enough engine of course, compared to one that is displacement, which is the Pilot. And the differences between them, and I mean the pros and cons, and what my opinion is of the two boats, having now owned both and having had a good time to test this one out. Now this one is testing with exactly the same engine that the Pilot had on, which is the 10 horse Honda at the moment. So it's not really enough to put this on the plane, but it doesn't really matter because it still pushes this along faster than the Pilot. So when we're out there doing a bit of fishing and that, we'll discuss that, because you know, nobody wants to sit here watching me discussing a comparison, and I thought it'd be much nicer if we were out there maybe catching a few fish discussing a comparison, but I'm not sure there's a lot of fish out there, that's why I'm doing this comparison today. But anyway, I've said to people I would do this comparison, and what I prefer and what I don't like and what I do like and all that sort of stuff, so we'll get to that after. Anyway, before we head out and fish, I'll give you the specs of both boats. Both boats are pretty much 16 foot. The old boat actually was about 17 foot. On the logbook it shows it as 17. I think it's just under 17 if you measure it. And this one is just over 16. So there's not a lot in lengthwise. Width, well the old one is 6 foot wide. This one is about that at actually the widest point, but it does get a lot narrower at the stern, whereas the old boat tended to be more, well, a lot wider. I say it tended to be more straight at the stern, whereas this one tapers in. Again, I believe that's to do with when it goes on the plane, having less contact with the water and all that sort of thing. And what else? Yeah, that's kind of it really on the length and width. They're very similar boats, although like I said, this one does look a lot less. Plymouth Pilot had lower gunnels. And again, from the shore it doesn't look like that, but when it's on the shore, the Pilot had a bigger keel, which made it sort of sit up higher, and it gave the illusion that it's a lot higher, but it's actually not. And of course the floor inside, this is, you're standing lower down, whereas the other one had like a floorboard in it. So, gunwale wise, again, there's not a lot in it. It's only a matter of 3 inches or something higher. This one, it's a bit, but it's not a massive amount. And again, that's part of the reason I went with this, to have that slightly higher gunwale as well. And one of the reasons why we removed the actual floorboards that were in here and went back to the original floor. Right, I suppose we should take a bit of a wander out there. I don't know how easy that was to see, but we are pushing through the passage between the lighthouse and the land, which is over there. And the water through here absolutely rips through here. This is like rapids quite often if it's a bit choppy coming through here. But as you could see, or maybe not see, I don't know how well I was holding the camera because it was shaking around a bit. We were doing somewhere in the region of 6.5 to sort of almost up to 9 miles per hour, sorry. The old boat, been lucky to be pushing 4 mile an hour through here. So there's an instant bonus to this boat, just the speed you can get against the tide. Because we're on top of the water, we're not practically complaining as such, but we are up high on the water. So we've got a lot less resistance than the old boat, which was sitting in the water. So that's an instant bonus. It saves time and it saves fuel. Okay, so the two boats. First of all, I'll just explain the differences. I might have done this already, but I'll do it again. So, planing hull, planes across the surface, top of the water. Displacement hull sits in the water, pushes through the water. A planing hull is obviously normally lighter and faster. Displacement hull is normally slower and heavier. The displacement hull will give you quite a bit of stability, assuming you're not in rough weather, of course. Give you quite a bit of stability, whereas the planing hull can rock a bit. Now, I'm going to address that straight away on these boats. I thought, when I got this boat, it wouldn't be anywhere near as stable as the Pilot. What I found was, that's not true. This boat, I would say, is as, or almost as, I wouldn't say it's exactly as stable as the Pilot. Why do I say that? I think it's partly to do with the reason is the fact that the way we built it, or when we refurbished it, because we put all the weight in the middle. We took away the floorboard area and went back to the original floor. We put rubber mat, which is fairly heavy, on the floor. We've got the batteries and everything sort of near the centre. Everything is kind of low down and centralised almost. I mean, you've got a winch and you've got the engine, of course, all that, but all the other weight is down there. And this is keeping it from rocking. The other thing, the big main difference that I found was on my back. You would think that the big stabler boat, like the displacement, would have been better for my back. Turns out this one is actually much friendlier to my back. When I sit, when you're moving in the boat, your back does this. It doesn't matter if you're standing or whether you're sitting. When you're standing, you can go with it, kind of thing. When you're sitting, you're sort of pivoting on your lower spine, like rocking with the lower spine. What I found was, with the big boat, with the Pilot, when the boat rocked, it almost, because of its weight, it almost kept it rocking. So like a pendulum, just boom, boom, boom. And this was horrible on my back, and it just kept doing it. And even when the wave stopped, you got this continuous sort of side to side motion, just because its weight is purely keeping it rocking. This thing, it might get knocked like this, but it after one or two, it just stops again. It pulls itself back up, stops rocking. It's not that heavy swaying. And that makes a hell of a difference on a bad back or an injured back. So that surprised the hell out of me, because I actually thought that this boat, that was going to be its downside, was its stability and possibly the motion of being thrown around all the time on the back. But it's actually worked out the opposite, that this boat actually seems to be a lot better on the back. Now of course the main difference is obviously the speed of this. I'm using the same engine. The old boat would do, I don't know, sort of 6-7 miles an hour average, you might say. This boat does around 10 miles an hour with the same engine. Now this engine's got a high thrust prop on it. The high thrust prop was originally because it was pushing the boat through the tide, and as I mentioned, or may have mentioned, going through that channel, the old boat would have done 4 miles an hour. This one was doing anything from 6 to 9, so a big improvement. And speed for me has become a little bit more important, because obviously, as I've mentioned about the back, it means I can get back quick, I can get out quick, I can get out, do some fishing, get back. I don't have to get out and then slog my way back, rocking on my back for the next few hours to get home. So that makes quite a big difference. Now, space. Well, the Pilot had a lot more space on it. It's obviously sort of wider overall, because it's got a wider stern as well. So it had a lot more room in the boat, so you can put a lot more pots on it, like when you're transporting them, this kind of thing. On the downside, it didn't have a lot of storage, because you had a cuddy at the front which was very small. You couldn't get a lot in it, and it was always wet in the bottom part of the cuddy, whereas this one has a much larger front cuddy, has a dry anchor well where you've even got a little drain, you can drain it out through the floor if it ever got water in it, so that's always very dry in that one. I've got a seat under this great big, or a cuddy under this great big seat thing, and I've got one at the back which is massive, and that is what is taking up all the space in this boat, is all the cuddies. And of course you've got this plastic everywhere and the side seats, and that all takes up room, so it makes it feel a lot smaller. Well, it makes it smaller, but it gives you a lot more storage, and the amount of safety gear and stuff I have to carry and that you want to keep dry, this is ideal for that. The other boat is a struggle always to keep your equipment from getting wet. And another bonus, kind of a bonus, although it's tight and can be restricted when you're doing stuff, you don't have to reach very far to grab stuff. If you need the knife, it's right there in the middle. I can reach it from there, I can reach it from there. I don't have to walk across the boat to get to it. So if you get your hook, a hand in your hook on a line, say on a long line or something like that, and you're stuck, which has happened once, I can reach the knife instantly without struggling to get to it. So having it compact can be a bonus as well. But again, you know, it's nice to have space as well. We better move, because you can see here how fast the tide is moving just by this marker in the water or the buoy. Now, as I've said, the displacements tend to be a lot heavier than the planing hulls, and what it is the fiberglass tends to be thicker on the displacements. Also, with my Pilot that I had, it had floor wood underneath the whole of the floor, so you had like great big ply with fiberglass. The result of that is when it gets wet in there, the wood soaks up all the water and makes the boat incredibly heavy. And that was one of the issues with that boat, is its weight. So when you're bringing it in and out, or putting it on a mooring, or having to move it around somewhere in the garden or whatever, it's a nightmare. 20 years ago, it wouldn't have been so much a nightmare, but nowadays it's a bit of a nightmare to move these things around. In comparison to this, I can just spin this around on my own. The other one, well, we moved the other one, it took, what did we have? We had 2 2, 3 gardeners and me pushing that other one by hand. This one I could pull this one by hand, although it's better with 2. But that's another big plus to this boat, is it's much lighter, and that's partly why I got this boat, is because of the lightness of it, the ease of it. You know, be able to get it onto a trailer, pull it out of the water just like that. Whereas the old boat, you had to arrange it, you had to get a couple of people down to help you, or I mean, we used to do it with 2 of us, but it's still a pain in the ass because of its weight and that. Now, one of the downsides to this boat is the fact that it has a hollow keel, and that I don't like at all. I mean, we poured resin, an inch or so of resin along it for the screws to give something them to bed into, because having it hollow with just the screws stuck in, I mean, you could clout something on your keel band and literally rip your keel band off, kind of thing. Then you've got leaking screw holes. Now, I know it's got a skin and the water can't get through this floor. It's like there's a buoyancy part between the floor and the keel underneath, like you got air. So your boat's not going to go down unless you haven't got proper seals on it. But it's just the thought that it can leak water into it if you hit something, or, you know. I mean, with the Pilot, I mean, you could literally run into a rock on that thing and just reverse it back and you'd be good. I mean, I haven't done it. Well, I say I haven't done it. I did clip one with the keel once when I was doing a crab pot. It just tapped one of the rocks. We were that shallow. But it didn't do any harm. But this thing, I'd be really worried about clipping anything with it. I'm going to drop down just in case it was a shoal fish. Might. Definitely something. It's tiny, whatever it is. It's got to be a sand eel. Or the tiniest pollock ever. Look at the size of that sand eel. That's a weenie one. That would be perfect bait, but I'm not going to mess around setting lines up. We're going to do that later on. Once the other engine goes on, we go on our fishing trips, and we'll start doing that. And then we probably won't find any sand eel. That's known as Sod's Law. Now, another plus to the Pilot would be crab pots. Not pulling crab pots necessarily, although it probably is better because it is but it's quite rough on when you haven't got thick fiberglass on your boat and stuff. You've got to make sure you cover everything up, like your gunnels and stuff, like with pipe and that. But definitely for that. And one major thing is like the pot that I've got stuck. With the Pilot, we've got the weight of the boat, so you can pull those pots out the bottom. This one, you don't have the weight. Plus, you've only got like a little T-bar thing on the front there, and that's not ideal for trying to free pots. So, in that respect, the Pilot would win. And if you were primarily doing pots, then you probably would go with the Pilot. If you're primarily, like I say, I do a bit of both, although I'm cutting back on pots. I'm not doing many now. Now, one of the big advantages to this boat, like I said, we've got the same engine on this boat that we had on the Pilot, and this boat definitely goes faster, and at the same time it's using less fuel. And I've noticed quite a big difference. I say a big difference, it's not an enormous difference. I mean, it would be literally like, if the fishing trips would be 1 or 2 litres less I use in a day here than I was using with the Pilot. And that's just purely because you're pushing a heavy weight. If you're fighting tide, it's slow. You're burning a lot of fuel, whereas this thing just shoots through it, gets to where you need to go, job done. Now, this boat's obviously got the same engine as the old one had. Now, if you're fishing solo, say you keep within a mile of the shore, and you know, maybe you're a bit calmer in your areas, that kind of thing, a 10 horse is perfectly fine. It gets you where you want to go. You do about 10 mile an hour, you get out there, do some fishing, you get back. And if you're conscious of fuel usage, then it's ideal. Now, if you wanted to go further than that, and you're going to go with 2 people, maybe even 3, but 2 people, then I'd probably consider going up around the, you know, up sort of 20 horse or wherever you want to go with it. But just as a solo fishing, this is ideal. Even with a 10, I mean, you could even go to a 15, but you know, it's up to you on whether it concerns you, the fuel usage. Right, just going to move up again because we're going to get caught in the current that's running down the line. Trying to go down there, it gets rough. So like I say, both boats have good points and bad points. But I wanted a boat which was going to be, well, obviously I needed to sort this out because the other one had the leak, and it was either spend money on something like this or spend the money and the time having to start sealing the leak on mine and renovating it more and all the rest of it. And like I say, it's a big heavy boat, and it would just be so much nicer to go a lot lighter with the boat. On top of that, when we're doing the sort of filming things with the boat, it's nice to be able to shoot out somewhere and do stuff, you know. Otherwise I've got to plan way ahead. Say we were going to go down the south and do like we do with the wrasse and maybe a bit of cooking and that sort of thing. I've got to get that all planned, like the trip all the way down there, because I've got to think of the tides, the time it's going to take. With this, I can do it more on the fly and just say, let's go and do that, bang, and just head straight down there, get it done, come back and then do my pots, whatever I need to do, or anything else that needs to be done. So that's the great advantage of having this boat. And also when it comes to taking it out, putting it in the water, this is going to make life a lot easier having this boat with not such heavy weights and all of that. Now some people say, oh, you won't better go out in this heavy weather. That might be true, but the thing with this boat is you can get out of there quicker. Obviously if you're in it, you're not going to go much faster because you're not going to go flat out through stormy weather. But if you're out there and you see it's getting bad, you can get the hell out. Whereas the old boat, sometimes when the weather was turning, you're sitting there and you see it building up around you, and your heart's coming out of your mouth because you know you're not going any faster. You're chugging away thinking, am I going to get out of here? How bad is this going to get? Even though the boat might have been a good, solid, stable boat, it doesn't change the fact that, you know, your heart's in your mouth. And with these sort of boats, it only takes one big wave to come in the boat regardless. You know, they don't, they're not like big fishing boats which have sealed decks where the water just runs off the decks. You get a wave in this, a big wave, and you know, it's pretty much game over, or nearly game over. So I've got the, you know, the thing of being able to get back out of trouble a lot quicker if I need to. Which boat do I prefer? Well, I'm going to be a little bit biased, aren't I, because I just bought this one. But I would say so far, definitely this one. For what I'm doing, this one. And so far, like I say, those little things like I was saying about when I sit down and the boat is and it's on the back, the other boat tends to rock a lot more than this boat. But I think that's just its weight. It gets, like I say, a pendulum effect going and it just keeps rocking. Whereas this one, it's not so bad. It tends to do that more when you're travelling, not that so much of that. But all in all, I mean, I liked both boats. The other boat has been fantastic over the years I've had it. Done exactly what I needed it to do. If it was a little bit slow. Like I said, that was its own downside. Now this, we can get a bit more range now. We can go out a bit deeper, we can go down that way, we can head off that way, and we can get back in a reasonable time. I don't have to think about spending a whole day having to go all the way down there, and then come all the way back, and at the same time have to worry about the weather. You know, if there's any sort of thing with the weather where it looks a bit sketchy, I'd have to cancel, because by the time it takes me to get back, it would just be too dangerous to go that far. So. The other thing with this boat, which is an advantage, is the electrics are kept much drier because you've got all these plastic bits and you've got cabins or cuddies and lockers and things like that. You can keep all your electrics dry. The other boat, well, you have to change them every couple of years because they would just rot through. Well, that felt a bit. What's up the bottom of that? It was a fish. We finally caught a fish. Well, sand eel. But it's a fish of sorts. Where are you? There you are. Here come the seagulls. They're like, give me that soon. We can get that one. He's gone back. Again, I think the boat that you get is going to depend on where you live, where you fish, that sort of thing, you know. I like the Pilot, it's a good coastal boat, good boat maybe for estuaries and things if you're in a marina somewhere where you have to worry about it on open moorings. So you've got to think on an open mooring as well, it's heavy on the mooring, so you need a heavy mooring to hold it all, whereas this is a lot lighter so it will pull through the waves. It won't pull on your ropes so much. And of course what you're doing, if you're doing a lot more pots, then you're probably better with a Pilot. Good sturdy working boat. But if you do more fishing like this, and only a few pots, then you're probably better off with this. And again, if you've got to travel long distances, definitely this. And probably a bigger engine. We'll find out later on with the engines. But for now, this has been perfectly fine, this engine. I haven't felt the need to sort of change it for what I do at the moment. The other engine is going to be purely more for probably doing video stuff when we drop that on, as opposed to me like fishing, catching fish for people. Because later on in the year everything sort of dies off anyway, so just got to put the other engine on and go out sightseeing. Mind you, the fishing's not really going that well at all at the moment, is it? I mean, we haven't even caught a mackerel. I tell you, I think so far this year, this has to have been the worst year I've known so far for fishing. I've seen a handful of bass, seen some mackerel, a few pollock, but all in all, what we've caught, well, go back 10 years, I've done that in a day with the rod. Well, almost, not quite. Slight exaggeration. Something else I should mention is this boat, you can spin it on a dime or a penny, but literally you can just turn it on the spot almost compared to the old boat, which is great when you've got to go in and rescue pots in amongst rocks and things, or you just need to get in amongst rocks. You can turn it around without worrying about having how much room you need to spin it. Right, I see some birds over there, so I'm going to follow them birds, because the other birds weren't very good, but these birds, they might be better. Ow. I'm kind of like tangled here. This is where I join the lines together, so I expected this would happen. I finally hooked a fish. Holy cow! We've caught something. Well, we haven't caught it yet, but you know what I mean. We've hooked something. What is it? What is it? It's mackerel! Giant mackerel! Oh well, at least we won't starve. There's that. Mackerel. Don't lose it. It's huge. Put it in there for a minute. It's sorted. At least I caught a mackerel. At least I caught two. Oh well. That's going to be tomorrow's dinner sword. Take a couple of nice fillets off them. nice mackerel dinner tomorrow. Might have been something. Oh, it is something. Oh, it is something. Here we go. We're on to some fish. Finally, after 3 days, we catch some fish. Look at that. Something grabbed it. I was going fast. That always makes me think it's a bass when it does that. 'Cause when I reel fast with these lures, quite often a bass will grab it. Probably pollock though. That's exactly what I said. Of course our battery has to die at the moment we have our glorious moment of catching our bass. Yeah, like I was saying, just as I said, usually when you reel really fast with these lures they catch bass. Right. It's not a pollock, it's a cucurus. Cucurus. This is the female one. Pretty little fish. The males are incredible looking fish. In here or on top of it. See it at the other end. Maybe it's a spider. It'll stand out quite well. This is the underside of a lobster. There's a lobster. There we go. 2 lobsters. That there is a nice big one. I say big one, decent sized one. There we go. Oh, nice lobster. Then we have a little lobster, a clipper, spider crab. Just going to grab onto everything again. And then this one. It's a real spiny one. See why they're so well defended. That one's actually done the shell change. Why it was darker and wouldn't be any good to eat. It's going to be full of water. Let's see if this pot's got anything in it. Nothing in this one, apart from spiders. Yeah, win them all. But we did get a lobster. It's only been 24 hours, so I'm alright with that. And this one's got no bait anyway, so probably had mackerel in this one, I think. Mackerel does not last, especially with spider crab. I like the thing's open. Don't know why it's open, but it's open. It's miserable, doesn't it, really? Well, at least we caught some fish. That's what we caught. We had we had 5 mackerel. I had to use one for bait because I didn't have any bait in my pot, but I only used the smallest of them. But you can see the mackerel's pretty big. I mean, compared to the bass is about 2.5 probably, and you can see that mackerel next to it. So good mackerel. And of course we had the one lobster just in the pots we just pulled just a few minutes ago. Nice hard shell one, lots of barnacles on it. So just pop that in there as well, I'll be fine. Here we go. So, got a nice meal for tomorrow.